Hello and welcome back to my channel, Checks, Captures, Threats, and in today's episode, in episode 9, we'll be going over how to use the rook effectively. So, we went over how to use the pawn effectively last episode. Hopefully you understand from those 5 examples with all the ways of how connected pawns, isolated pawns aren't good, so and so. Anyway, today we have got 4 examples over how the rooks work. So here in the first example we're showing how rooks are good in open files. Then the second example will be how connecting rooks are very good and how we can use those to win pawns, etc. Third example here is how rooks belong on the 7th rank. And the last example for today will also be how to use a rook with a passed pawn to try and promote. So, hopefully we understand what we're doing for this episode, and let's get into it. So, here, open files. Now, this is a standard middle game, the position. You know, I'm pretty sure, is very even. I think white's slightly winning. But here, what white can do is it's quite cramped in this position. You know, this pawn's kind of blocking these pieces in, this bishop's all blocked in. This rook can become active very quickly here with going to e1 here. You see it controls this whole line, this whole file we'll call it, because it's open file after the name of it. So here this kind of gives us, you know, the queen cannot move really off of this. It can only go here now if it does want to move. It can't go here because it loses the queen, obviously. The knight obviously becomes quite blocked in. This bishop as well can't, you know, force a pin. Open files are there, so it kind of, you know, it firstly makes your rook very open, because if you ever want to, if I just make a move in the future, you can just bring your rook up here and you can attack the king. But also, it will also attack pieces that, you know, will stop it from becoming good. So now, there's some of their pieces now kind of become, you know, locked into position, which obviously they don't want. So it kind of forces them into having to reroute, which is what we would want. Okay, first example done. Hopefully you understand that. Second example here is connecting rooks. So here we have each have 2 rooks. Rook on d4 and e4, and they have rook on f2 and b8. So, as it's white's move again, we'll be showing you here how this is the difference between 2 connected rooks and 2 not connected rooks. So, here you see this rook controls this and protects this rook, and this rook protects this other rook and goes here. So it contains the whole file and they protect each other. So white could play moves such as this. Let's say maybe it wanted to try and swap off at this particular point. Now this obviously puts black in predicament firstly already, because it's either got to move, which is kind of wasting a move because that gives us more of an advantage, like if we went here. But also, if they do trade, you can see our rook is being much more active than this, just protecting a b6 pawn. So, another way this is good is these only takes 2 moves to reconnect them. So, if I wanted to move to here, we're going to put this rook onto here, and they will not be able to stop us from winning this pawn. They could try and get like this to try and protect it, but it's just too late. These pawns will just get this. So if it tries to come back, in the end we will have this pawn and we should win the game. So what this shows is how always try and connect your rooks, whatever the cause. It's always going to help, because the rook is the second most powerful piece, I would say, because the king is probably the most powerful technically, but really can only move 1 square, which isn't good. But the queen is by far the most powerful, but then you've got the rooks after. So make sure that you're using the rooks, especially opening. You shouldn't be using your rooks. Middle game should really be when the rooks start to get out towards the centre, is another thing you could say for the rooks, but that's not always the case depending on the position. But the end game is really where unless you've swapped them off, is the end game is where the rook should thrive, really. So, that's the second example. Now, third example here is 7th rank. So, here, in this position, we have a rook on c7, rook on there, and then they have a knight and a rook, so they're exchanged down. Anyway, this rook we've put on c7, as you can see, it attacks this pawn, and the reason we want to have a rook on the 7th rank is so it attacks all the pawns that haven't moved, because obviously all the pawns for black is on the 7th rank at the start of the game, and all of ours is on the 2nd rank. So this gives us kind of a way to attack the pawns that are quite weak and haven't had that much protection. So here we would have a chance of this, but also another way is, again, thinking about the last example, we're able to connect them. Connecting rooks on the 7th file is one of the best things you can have for rooks, because again, how he said how they kind of attack at the same time each way, there is no way they can stop this pawn, and if they try to do something like this, what we can do is we can put pressure here. So when, let's say, this moved, now we have, look at this, we have so much pressure against this king, it's slowly going to go. This pawn will be gone, and we should easily win the game, as the evaluation puts us 6 points up. So, what this shows here is how rooks can be, 7th rank. They attack every pawn that haven't moved, and they create obviously a line in front of the king, because obviously the king should always really be on their own 1st rank or 8th rank, whatever way. But there's that. So always try and connect your rooks, and if you can't, it's fine, but try to connect your rooks on the 7th rank. At least one rook on the 7th rank is always the best, because there's also sometimes knights, bishops, that are here from the opening, because some openings might have these knights going here, the bishop might have to go there, or when they Frenchetto, for example, like I said in previous episodes. So, hopefully we understand that. And now the last example for today will be going over how to use a rook with a passed pawn. So, obviously here we're pawn up, as we can see quite obviously. Now, as its whites go, rook is attacking this pawn, and I would like to protect it. Now, you may think, we can protect it going to here, but this pins our pawn into this rook, because our rook can only now move between here without losing the pawn, and this pawn now can't move because of the rook. So this kind of lets their king get involved, and then our king, it's just not going to work really, as now the evaluation puts us dead even, so it'd be a draw. So, in this position, the winning move, thinking about how we protect rook c1, now, is what we could call technically a semi-open file, because it is open but 1 to 2 pieces are blocking it, but it's still very good. So, and now as we can see here, using how we know how to attack and protect pieces, we're protecting this c5 pawn now, as one-on-one they can't take. And now, why the rook is so good for these is we can just attack now, because it takes them just about enough time to get back here. And now, this is pinned. Technically, this is literally nailed down to c8. It cannot move. See, if we did this, it moves, we promote. So, it's stuck there. So when this comes over, we can lure it. So when you have something like this, what you can do is you can, put your king forward. Now, either it just won't do anything here, or it's got to get another piece involved to try and capture this. So while that's trying to capture that, we can take another pawn here. So after all of this happens, we are now winning, because this pawn is just going to promote now. So what I'm trying to get across here is how the rook, when it's a passed pawn and it's blocked by a rook and it cannot move, it's good to just try and lure it away. Now that's using the king here, but maybe if each person had another rook, they have to get another rook involved to take that pawn. Our rook could go and capture their pawns and go on the 7th rank. It could do whatever. But trying rooks behind passed pawns is very necessary in this. So hopefully you understand that. That should be all for today. So just to recap, we went over how rooks belong in open files with this, how connected rooks thrive with how they protect each other and attack everywhere. Also 7th rank, even connected rooks on 7th rank, of how they attack everywhere. And last but not least, we also showed how rooks work well behind passed pawns here, and how it can just push up and it kind of forces a rook or another piece into a very bad position. So that is all for today. Next episode will be another how to use, and it'll be another piece. Again, I don't know what. Will probably be a knight or bishop. So hopefully look forward to that. So that will be all for today. So thank you and bye bye.